What's up, everyone? Welcome to the What's Up Webcast. Do this every Friday, 10 a.m. Pacific, right here at the Skywatch USA YouTube channel. We cover everything from what's up in the nighttime sky to equipment to helpful tips and tricks. And of course, at the end of the month, we have a special guest to talk about their specialty in the field of astronomy. Today is a pre-recorded episode because I'm at the Grand Canyon Star Party, and you should be too. Today is going to be kind of a cool episode. We have our buddy Richard Wright on. He's been on before. Richard, like myself, is involved with a lot of different things inside the astronomy community. So we've talked a lot of different topics with Richard, and that today is no different. But if you like what you see here, please go ahead and subscribe, leave a like on the video, and, you know, the typical YouTube stuff. If you want to support the channel a little bit more, you can head over to skywatchusa.com. You can pick up your favorite equipment off of our website or through your favorite dealer. If you want to support the channel, you can also head over to skywatcher.threadless.com and pick up any kind of cool swag to go with your Skywatcher stuff. But without further ado, I'm going to bring Richard in, and we are going to get this started. Again, this is a pre-recorded episode. It is not live, so if you are commenting on it or anything like that, I'm not here to answer questions. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started. Hey, Richard, how you doing? Oh, wait, hold on. There we go. There's Richard. Ta-da.
Hey, Kevin. Doing great. Getting ready because I will be at the Grand Canyon too when people are watching this. So
there you go.
Pretty fun for everybody.
If you haven't been to the Grand Canyon Star Party, you should. I know I talk about that every year, but you really should. It took me a while to get Richard up there, and now he pretty much comes every year.
Yep, I'm hooked. Yep.
So today's topic is something that Richard and I have discussed before, and we might bounce between two related topics, which is reviews and beta testing, which kind of go hand in hand in a way. I'm not going to ask Richard the usual, how did you get started in astronomy? Because we've had him on numerous times. If you want to know that, go watch one of the other episodes. But he's been involved. How long have you been doing astronomy?
Well, like on my own since I was in my teens, since I was a kid. So
yeah.
So
you've got
40 years, more than 40 years. Yeah.
And then for those who don't know, Richard does software programming. He's worked with Software Bisque. He's worked with many different companies on the back end on various projects. You're actually working on the Pegasus Smart Eye right now, which we'll have to have Richard back on to talk about that later. So anyway, Richard's got a track record. It's good. He's got a good resume going on for him. So if you've never met him or never watched the episode, he knows what he's talking about. So anyway, for this particular episode, Richard does a lot of reviews, mostly for Sky and Telescope magazine, but you've done reviews for other outlets as well, correct?
Yeah, I started off Astronomy Technology Today, and then I'm actually still listed as a contributing editor at Amateur Astronomy magazine. Charlie Warren picked that up a few years back, and I contribute there occasionally. But mostly, I'm contributing editor at Sky and Telescope, and there's over 100 articles about astrophotography on their website, and I'm 50, and I'm closing in on I've done dozens of written reviews for the magazine and a few feature articles and things like that. So I've done a lot of reviews.
So with that being said, there's a lot of stuff on YouTube. There's a lot of stuff on forum websites where people are like, oh, I reviewed this and I reviewed that. And I think a lot of that can be helpful in its own environment. But I'm curious, because you do this on a professional level, when you are getting ready to do a review, let's say someone's like, well, I want to start doing reviews. What would be how did you get started in doing reviews? Because you definitely need to have an approach where you take a lot of very careful observations of the product that's being reviewed, because you want it to make sure that it speaks to the reader and it makes sense
Hmm.
to those who might be interested in picking up this product or something similar to it.
Hmm. Yeah. So, first of all, I'm a writer. I'm not a YouTube person, which is why I end up in the magazines more than or blogs instead of YouTube videos. And it's a different personality. Doing videos is one personality, and reading and writing is a different type of personality as far as the reviews go. Not necessarily speaking to my own, um, but if you writing a review, I mean, it's always good. Anybody can share their experience with a piece of gear. So I bought something and I could never get it to work, and the manufacturer wouldn't help me, and you should be warned. Anybody can and should, do that in the
That's
public forums.
basically
Yeah.
Yelp. So,
If you're getting paid for doing a review, it's a job. It's not a haphazard, ooh, toy came on the porch today and I get to play with it. And while I'm playing with it, I'll take some pictures and then I'll just kind of write up what I thought of it. Um, Nobody wants to pay you for a review like that. That may work on YouTube. And I'm not denigrating the YouTube reviews at all. I'm just saying it's a different, I mean, you don't get paid to do YouTube. You just hope enough people watch and then you monetize that in different ways. It's very different when somebody pays for a magazine and then the magazine is paying you to do a review. There's, some methodology to it. And I have to say, my first several written reviews weren't paid. They were just, I've always been a writer. I wrote professionally in the tech field long before I, got to be known in this industry. And so I like to write. I wrote a book and people were like, "Oh, you must be an expert on this subject because you wrote a book on it." I'm like, I didn't write the book because I was an expert. I actually became an expert by writing the book. And that's a lot of my motivation for doing the reviews is not only do I want to be an expert astrophotographer, but because I'm also a product developer, I want to be an expert on astrophotography. And you can only become an expert on what you have. A lot of reviews that I see, online, the informal reviews. And again, there's nothing wrong with it. It's like, I have this telescope and I have this camera and I live here with these kinds of skies. And I've worked out this method that works really great. And the danger in that is realizing that you've found some local problem domain that works great for the scope you have and the camera you have and the targets you're interested in, but that does not apply to everyone who has a different mount or has a different optic or is interested in shooting different types of things or has a different kind of camera. So a lot of my motivation for doing reviews is, again, it's a terrific education. Um, to use all kinds of cameras and all kinds of equipment um, and things. I don't know if I've answered your question enough. I'm
no, but
I'm known
we've
I'm
talked
known for
about,
taking off. I'm known for taking off and rambling for hours. So which you know well.
yeah,
Um,
we've
so
talked about
yeah.
that though. It's a good camera lenses come to mind, particularly in astronomy, and we've had multiple conversations just on the phone as friends about, hey, this lens looks really cool, and maybe for this application, like going to the zoo, because I know you've done that before, it's like this lens would be
Mhm.
great. And then you get that lens and then you put it into astronomy and it just falls apart. It just is not well suited for
Right.
that. And I think that can
Right.
be difficult when you have people doing reviews, is if you're only approaching it from one aspect, it works in your particular methods, but maybe in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't work for others. And you have to be
Right.
able to tell
Right.
kind of this story about it on multiple levels.
Right. Yeah, my advantage is, when I went to work for Software Bisque, I was a consultant there for close to 20 years. And at first I was doing, 3D graphics sort of things. And then I started doing more and more of the work in the imaging line. And I had been doing imaging before I went to Software Bisque, and I was awful as an imager. And I wanted to write a plugin for my DSLR, and I told Steve, I said, I think I want to do a plugin for the Canon camera to work with the sky. And he's like, well, that's great, but I'm not paying for it, which is the way of saying don't put it on your, don't put it on your invoice. If you want to do that, that's on your own. So I did, and I got working on Windows and Mac. And as soon as it came out, QSI came along and said, "Hey, so you know about the Mac? We got a Windows plugin. If we send you a camera, would you get it working on the Mac?" And I'm like, "Sure." And so, ta-da, now I have experience with a DSLR and experience with a CCD. That's my first CCD camera, by the way. Kevin Nelson, wherever you are, thank you very much. He was like my mentor early on. And this snowballed. Next thing you know, I have 15 cameras and 8 focusers and 3 rotators and all sorts of things. And I would not release a plugin until I'd used it outside. Everything works on the simulator. Everything works on your computer on the desk. You take it out in the dark, all kinds of things come out on it. And so this was a tremendous advantage because it was a tremendous education for me. I mean, I owe a lot to that experience and learning a lot of things the hard way and learning, a lot of user error, okay, about, different types of equipment and expectations. And then that expanded to telescopes and things. In fact, my first review for Sky and Tel was how to pick a astronomy camera. Based on the fact that I don't, very few people other than a software developer had more than, 1 or 2 or 3 cameras, at their disposal. Um, so that being a software developer was a huge advantage to me as a reviewer in that I became an expert on a lot of different gear and I knew how to gauge my, expectations and what's reasonable to expect out of a piece of hardware and what's not reasonable. And I also learned how to debug problems, fairly well with different kinds of equipment and new equipment and things like that.
I think you kind
So,
of hit on it there a little bit as well, because beta testing, you're kind of like a professional reviewer, but you're specifically reviewing it
oh yeah,
for development purposes. And there's a lot of people out there, I know you've seen it. You see it at NEAF all the time, and it's fun. I remember being in that crowd too, where it's like, well, I'll beta test this for you, jokingly. And I get it. And having been on that side, I get it. But when you're beta testing something, it's a transaction. Maybe you're not getting paid for it, but a company will send you whatever and they expect you to evaluate it. And normally they're going to send you a product that still needs development on it, that does have some bugs. And that's the whole point, is to iron it out. And for you to basically give your findings on it. But they're going to do that with people who have large experience with a broad range of outlets that the product in question probably relates to. And
yeah,
they
yeah,
expect something from you. So you're, in a way, you're kind of a reviewer. But the methods are a little bit different. But I see a lot of people where they say, oh, I will beta test it for you. And I think it's more of, I just want to get my hands on it first before everyone else, rather than, but then I've had people do this where you'll send something out, they'll complain about it. It's like, well, the point isn't for you to complain about it. We knew there were issues with it. The point is to get the product, evaluate it, and give us
right,
constructive criticism on what bugs we need to refine before this goes to release.
right. And informed feedback and informed criticism. I've gone off on a rant on this a couple of times. I might get myself in trouble, but I'm a software developer and an engineer first, and an amateur astronomer second. It's a very, very big second. But this whole thing about beta testers goes back, many, many decades with me, more, but long before I got involved in amateur astronomy professionally. And it's it's frustrating because good beta testers are really hard to find.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Everybody wants to beta test, and that's because they think they're getting something for free. And every now and then somebody will say, "Well, this would be nice to get free camera." Like, really? It was free? What's your time worth? Because I bill out an XX per hour, and at what it took me to build the plugin for this and to debug it, I could have charged by the hour and made enough to buy 3 cameras. So it wasn't
Mm-hmm.
a free camera. And when you're beta testing, it's the same way. What's your time worth? Because, I've had manufacturers send me things and pay me to evaluate it. Should we bring this to market? And sometimes I'm like, yeah, this is great. Sometimes I'm like, no, it's not. And they want a full engineering report on it. They want to know how it performs, and they want to, did you try it? What were the conditions like? So you have to record everything, and you have to know what you're doing to do that. And unfortunately, it is true. People think, well, beta test means I get it and I try it out. And if it crashes, I let you know. It's like, no, if you're beta testing, you may get paid in kind, like we let you keep the hardware. I do have some hardware, that I've beta tested and then they don't want it back. But I worked for that hardware. Um, and when I have a small group of beta testers. Um, Hey, you're actually one of them because you have a smart
Mm-hmm.
eye.
Yep.
But I have a very small group of people. Everybody on the smart eye team got to pick, two or three people, and I was like, okay, I've got two or three people that I know are good beta testers. Another guy in Georgia, I'll leave some names out of it, but I know he was a nuclear guy in the Navy. He knows how to keep secrets, but I also know he's thorough. He builds things from scratch, and he knows how to problem solve, and that's part of the thing too. With a beta tester, you want somebody that is more capable than your end user, your typical end user, initially, because when they get the problem, it's not like sometimes this does this. Spend some time on it, and it doesn't do this if I press this button first. But if I do this, but if I don't turn on cooling first, then it doesn't do this. And then okay, now I get some idea of the code path that's creating that problem. But when you get a beta tester, testing your imaging software, you don't want to have to answer questions like why dithering your darks doesn't get rid of hot pixels, or I don't know what north up means in an astrophoto, or I set up and everybody kept saying Polaris is over there, and I don't know why they were worried that I didn't know where Polaris was. You know, you need to know what you're doing to be useful as a beta tester. And when you say, "Hey, I can beta test for you," another way of saying that is, "Hey, I would like to work for you. Would you hire me? And I will do real good work for you, and you can pay me either in money or in hardware, or lend me the hardware." I don't understand. Um, there are companies that will send you something to beta test, and then they want the hardware back, and it's like I don't do that anymore. It's like, dude, I'm very valuable, at my day job, and I've got a lot of things to do. I'm not gonna work for you for free. Um, that's just it. So in my view, if you're going to be a good beta tester, you should get the hardware, or you should get the software, at least, at the end of the day. um, but I and other vendors as well, when you beta test for them, they expect you to work for it. I haven't had a clear night in 6 months. Really? Really? I checked the weather forecast. You had a good streak of well, it was a PTA night and the kids were sick and I was tired. That's fine, but you can call into work sick sometimes, but over 6 months, you should have had some time to work on that and try it out. The other day I got up at 4 a.m. because I wanted to try something outside, because it was the only weather window
Mm-hmm.
I've had in over a month. And it's a job, and a job will, some people say, when your love becomes job, you never work a day in your life. No, now you're going to work every waking minute is what it's
Yep.
going to be, because you love working, but it is work. And there are times where I've called Kevin and I'm like, I'm selling everything and I'm going to sell pizzas the rest of my life. Um, it does become a job, and it is real work, just like, anybody's day job is. So,
But a lot of what you said about being a beta tester also really effectively carries over into being a reviewer as well.
right,
Um,
right.
where again, if you're reviewing a good review, I know there's a lot of people out there that review something. A lot of it ends up just being your experience. But I kind of find, and I don't know if there would be a better term for that because I'm not trying to knock anybody, because there's a lot of people who are just getting started in their channel or their write-ups or
First
whatever it may
foremost,
be. Um, but on a reviewing on a professional level, I guess that's a better way to divide it, is there is expectations that you know what you're talking about on a high level. And it's even more beneficial, like Richard, that has expertise with a wide range of products. So you're actually able to kind of compare and contrast, maybe not directly in the review, but you're able to approach it in such a way where it's like, well, I know people are going to compare this to this. And my experience was this, having had time with both of those things. So here's how that application would actually work. And I know that's a big deal when you're writing a 6-page review for Sky and Telescope and getting paid to do it. And when you're getting paid, there's a difference in what quality is expected of you, because now money is involved. And I found that with everything, even if, like I've done the shows here where I talked about, going from just being someone who volunteers your time, doing events, to actually making money off of like private events. When money starts to get involved, the expectation dramatically goes up of what you're expected.
That's another rant. The difference between volunteering for nonprofits. I said I don't work for free. That's not entirely true. I do work for nonprofits. If I'm volunteering for a nonprofit, that's very different. And it is, oh man, it's so frustrating. That's another thing that I've complained about and get myself in trouble. But the local astronomy club or the local church or the local scouts or whatever it is, there's such a difference between that and like my daily work environment. You have a lot of people volunteering, and it's a great way to build management experience. Or pad your resume. But the thing is, you end up working with a lot of people who are beginners, who aren't very well organized, who who are learning how to run an organization, the hard way. But yeah, one thing I wanted to say too is you were talking earlier, just to get back on topic. I have to give a lot of credit to the editors at Sky and Telescope, because that's another advantage that I have. I mean, people like, I'll say some names like Dylan and Trevor and Ashley, they put out a really good quality product pretty much on their own. I am cheating. I have at least 2 editors that go over my stuff and make me look good. And Sean Walker, the main editor I work with all the time, he will send me texts and go, Richard, you're all over the place. Or Richard, could you organize this a little bit better? And so like you said, the expectation is a lot different when it's in print than it is in video. And there's no retakes on a video. Once it gets printed in the magazine, it's printed in the magazine. And the best you can hope for is an errata, the next month or two. So, yeah, I guess I just want to throw that out too. Kudos, thank you to all the editors at Sky and Telescope magazine, because you make me look really smart, and then everybody thinks that I'm a genius. And really, I'm smarter than average, maybe. But
there is something to be said when you've got.
I can pass for a genius in some crowds, but I'm not really a genius.
There is something to be said when you do have a group to follow up on your work to make it look even more polished, which is nice to have. And that's probably harder to do on the YouTube side, unless you're bigger and you've got like a producer or editor there with you, but that's only on the largest of channels there.
Yeah.
Now, it's something that I've seen before. I'm sure you've seen it. I find that it comes up more in the world of YouTube and social media. Is you have people who have a platform, insert whatever platform that might be, and they give their thoughts or review of a product that they've never actually touched. And I find that to be a rather dangerous and slippery slope to be in, because as the person doing it, you need to be careful that you're not saying things that are wrong, because you can actually get yourself into trouble doing that. Um, but you also want to make sure that if you want to grow your foundation and grow your credibility, that anything you're putting out there is credible and is supported by facts and data and not speculation. And I find that has become a bigger thing lately, where it's like, I get you call it a review and you have this platform and you've got eyes on you and people who are respecting your word. But I've seen it time and time again where people are just, here's my review, but I've never actually touched the product. And I've seen this before when we released the EQ8R. I've seen this lately with the HAC 125DX. People putting out their review of a product when I know personally how many and where all the samples are. And I know for a fact the people in question are not in that group. So what is your thought as someone who does reviews professionally, on a large level, for maybe people who are new, starting their own review channels or outputs, about doing speculative reviews rather than a factual review?
Are you telling me that there are people on the internet talking a lot about things they don't know anything about?
I guess so,
That's,
yes.
I guess so. Yeah, it's exasperating. Um, there's a couple of things that this could actually touch on. One is, there's a need to be seen and build up clicks and likes, and people with good content and good intentions will often slip down that slope of, I need to get people's attention. I haven't done anything recently. I haven't put out any good pictures or any reviews. And somebody's shipped a new camera or widget, and there's a picture of the widget and there's some specs, and I'm going to criticize it based on the picture and the specs, even though I've not actually used the product. Um, that's just a commentator. It's not a review. I'm just making commentary on some new product that got released. Don't try to call that a review. That's if you don't have the object in your hands and you haven't used it, it's not a review. There's also, I've seen people pass off unboxing videos as reviews, and I remember the first time I saw this, going, are you serious? And that particular forum, I won't even go to that forum anymore. And that's one of the reasons. Like, I got it and I opened the box and it's top notch and shiny metal, and it feels heavy in my hands, and I can tell its quality. I can't wait to get it out into the sky. And they spent 2 pages talking about their unboxing of it and their inspection of it, but they haven't actually used it in the way it was meant. It's like getting a new lens, right, for my camera, and I haven't even taken so much as a picture of a flower in the yard. And I'm writing a review about the lens. It's like, you just couldn't wait. It's like a child. I'm going to get in trouble for this. I don't care. It's like a child who just can't wait to jump into the conversation. And it's like, I need to be a part of the conversation. Even though I don't really have anything to contribute, I need to be part of the conversation. And every single one of us, myself included, feels that on a regular basis. But at some point, you learn to hold it in. And when you don't learn to hold it in, at least afterwards, we have the grace to go, I should have kept my mouth shut. But when it comes to an online forum, if you have that realization, you should probably delete it and not leave it there. What's really funny is I did a review. Um, uh, Daystar sent me their new big solar scope, and I wrote a fake one-page review, and it was a mock review to be funny, because Jen Winters and I, we talk all the time and we're friends. I'm like, I'm going to send her like this mock review. And it was the worst review the worst quality review. Like, the box is great and this looks fantastic, and I like that they use carbon fiber, but there was no substance to it whatsoever. And I made some wildly inaccurate guesses, and I sent it to Tiffany, poor Tiffany at Daystar. Well, she read it and she does not understand my sarcasm. And she went to Jen and she was like, I thought this guy was smart. He acts like he doesn't know anything what he's talking about. And it was kind of funny, joke on Tiffany. But what's worse is she thought it was real,
Mm-hmm.
and which means which means she's experienced. I wasn't really mocking fake reviews. I actually impersonated fake reviews so well that somebody believed that it was a real review of just really poor quality, whereas I was trying to be sarcastic. And it was one of those, I don't have the equipment, and I'm going to write up a whole bunch of stuff about something that I've not even used. And again, it's the peril of social media. These are growing pains of civilization, right? Social media. Everybody's got to have something. Everybody's got to be saying something. I got to have likes and people seeing my thing. And you start getting desperate for something to say. Even I've seen some celebrities, that like quasi respect or whatever, that haven't done anything in a while. And you can tell from their posts, it's just this desperate plea for attention to get become relevant again. And don't do that. You have to maintain credibility. um, I think one of the most valuable things I've learned from the Sky and Telescope staff, and being a part of that, is they hold me to a certain standard as well. And I've learned to embrace that, and to insist on that in myself, but also on other things that I see elsewhere. And even if it's not a written review, there's some integrity. Get it and use it for a while. One of my editors said, one of the things I like about your reviews, Richard, is you've actually used it. For a while, it's like it takes you too long. Why you've had this for 6 months? I said, yeah, and I've used it a bunch, and I tried this, and I tried this, and I tried this, and I tried that. And he's like, okay, yeah, that is valuable. Well, we can put that in the review because you tried it a whole bunch of different ways. Um,
Do you want quality
yeah,
or quantity?
yeah, and we live in a society. I'm very fortunate that there's still a magazine in existence, right? Nobody wants to read anymore. They want real quick sound bites, which is also really funny to me because I can read the script for a 30-minute YouTube show in 10 minutes and get all the same information and save 20 minutes of my life. I think video is like the worst concentration of information available. I would much rather read for 10 minutes than watch something for 35 minutes to get what I needed to get,
Yep.
out of it. Um, but
I would
yeah.
probably say that's a good point altogether, where I think there's a lot of people out there who ask, how do I get started with my YouTube channel? How do I get started in reviews? The last couple of years at NEAF, I've had some newer YouTube channel people come up and ask for like a walkthrough and an interview at the booth and stuff like that. And it takes a lot of work to build up a channel, but there are a handful, and I know you've done these videos too, of, I would say, professional reviewers or high tier reviewers and video, whoever you want to call it. There's channels out there like Cosmos Safari. Dave Farina comes up
Mhm.
to mind really, really quickly, who's on next month, actually. We're going to have him on. Um, but people like that, or like Space Koala, was new to us this year. Hi, Space Koala. But
I know so.
it if you're gonna, there's no problem getting started. Everyone's got to start somewhere. We started this YouTube channel, and if I look back at it, it's a mess in comparison to what we have now. Richard's early reviews, or even your early photos, anything you're new at is terrible. And you look back and you're like, wow, I've come a long way. But what I would probably say to people getting started, and I've seen a lot of new YouTube people coming and social media people coming on, there's nothing wrong with getting started and sharing your opinions on the topic of interest. But what I would say, and Richard kind of mentioned too, you want to hold yourself to a certain level of quality, and don't get distracted by going down these little rabbit holes of easy picked fruit where it's basically just conflict, because conflict is really easy to just get a bunch of people looking at you very, very quickly. It's a lot harder to come in and establish yourself and become a respected figure. That takes a lot of time, and you're playing the long game there. And if that's your goal and you want your YouTube channel or your review site or insert whatever you're doing, you want to be seen as professional, high quality, and reputable, you need to hold yourself to a standard all the time and try not to let yourself, it'll happen, you'll slip, but try to correct that and don't just become some clickbaity little thing and stir up
Yeah.
controversy. Because if you're doing a channel like this or you eventually hope to monetize this thing or get paid to do it, people need to feel, companies, whatever, need to know that you're a professional. Maybe you're not getting paid on the level of professional, but maybe your approach is professional, and they know that you're going to treat this in a professional manner and not some he said, she said kind of thing. And just so hold yourself up to a certain level of quality. It will take you way further, but it might take longer to get there.
Yeah, and that reminded me of something. Nobody, well, I shouldn't say nobody. Most professional organizations, nobody wants to publish a bad review. Um, like Sky, if you send in an unsolicited review to Sky and Telescope, and there's writer guidelines, by the way, on the Sky and Telescope website. You can read the guidelines for submitting a publication. But if you send in a bad review, you basically look like you've got an axe to grind. I had a bad experience with this vendor, and I'm going to write up all about this bad experience, and it was horrible. We're not going to put that in the magazine. Charlie won't put that in the magazine. I don't think Stuart will put that in Astronomy
There's a lot
Technology
of
Today.
YouTube
There's,
level people who won't really, if it's bad, like if it's just
yeah,
bad, they will
yeah.
not release it.
Quality, I've sent things back and said I can't review this. Quality, the quality YouTubers that I know of, that I watch occasionally, they won't publish a bad review either. There may be a business model for, a game show like, Carnival Bash something, and somebody might capitalize on that. But that's not what most people really, that's not useful. It's entertainment, but it's not useful. It's kind of like the news, right? It used to be news, and now it's just entertainment. It's not really useful to watch the news hardly. Sorry, but by the way, I'm not taking either side in that. It's all crazy. Um, but yeah, don't bad reviews aren't really that useful. I just sound like I have an extra ground, and there's an obvious bias there. Sky and Telescope does not like me to review things that I bought. They made two exceptions for that. Once because it was very highly customizable, and it wasn't like, "Hey, vendor, I want a review of your such and such if you send me a free such and such customized for my particular likes." I think it was the Wood Wonders thing. You get your name monogram with glow in the dark, and you pick the design and all that sort of thing. And I'm not going to tell this guy if you send me a free eyepiece case, I'll write a review for Sky and Tel. And so they made an exception. So okay, you can order that, and we'll write the review. You can write the review. The only other time they let it slide was when it was a very inexpensive doohickey that I bought, and I wrote the review for that. But in general, if you buy it, there's also a built-in bias to that because I've spent my money on it. And if I spend my money on it, I'm going to do everything I can to convince myself that that was money well spent, and I'm going to fluff it up. The opposite of that, of course, is the axe grinding thing. Is like I bought it, I spent my own money, and it was awful, and I'm really mad. And if I get a product for review and it's not very good and it doesn't meet my expectations, I just don't review it. I'm not mad at the vendor because I didn't spend my own hard-earned money on a review product that I didn't write the review for. So it's a very different scenario. Another thing that you touched on, Kevin, was you can't forget that this is a business. So many people think, like in the software world, if I make this great program and I get it on the App Store, everybody's going to flock to it. No, that's only half the work. It's not even half the work. It's probably even less than half the work making the software. You have to promote it. You have to be good at promotion. If you look at the successful YouTubers, they're not just funny on camera and competent at video editing. They're also really good at promoting their videos and getting the word out. A lot of things that you don't recognize. There's a space artist that I like. And I'm amazed not by her space art, but I'm even more amazed by her business acumen because she paints nebulas and things and then sells them. But she's so good at her newsletters and she's so good at her social media posts and how to get and build up engagement. So if you want to do reviews and you want to get paid for it or you want to monetize a video stream, you have got to learn the business of promoting your product. There are a lot of people who are a lot smarter, than me, who are completely unnoticed. But simply because they didn't get noticed. It's like my number one career advice when I used to teach a course on computer graphics. I would my biggest advice to my students and to my children was, do a good job is very, very important. That's the boomer generation, right? They believe in hard work and doing a good job. That is a prerequisite, but you have to get noticed. And it feels kind of slimy promoting yourself sometimes. But if you don't get noticed, it won't matter that you're doing hard work. You have to get noticed. And that in itself is as much work as, getting up early and not sleeping in and all the other stuff that goes with doing a good work ethic.
Yeah,
So
there's a
yeah.
point I want to go back on as well, where I don't want people to think that, just because people don't release bad reviews, that you're getting information like withheld. There's every review is going to have a critique. When I send something to anybody for a review, whether it be Sky and Telescope, Astronomy Magazine, Astro Backyard, whoever, we don't pay for those reviews, because by paying for the review, it loads the deck, and it's not fair for everyone who reads that review. We send something out, we want their opinion on it, and we have full expectation that it will never be 100% what the person wants it to be. There's always critiques. That's how it's going to be. It could be, wow, that review was great, but I didn't like this, this, and this. I do the same thing when I get products in from the factory and the engineering team for beta testing. That's my job, is like, hey, I got this. I didn't like that. I didn't like this. I would adjust that. Not everything gets addressed. Nothing will ever be perfect. And everyone's approach to it is going to be different. Something that Richard likes might not be something that, say, Trevor at Astro Backyard likes, because their approach to things is going to be different. But sometimes you get things that are just so egregiously bad that it does no one any favors to publish this. And that's also to the point of being a good beta tester, as well as those critiques need to be not complaints, but they need to be helpful critiques. So the
Oh
company can
yeah.
then go back and be like, we
Yeah.
messed up. We need to address these issues and fix them before whatever. And because putting out something bad, like if Richard puts something out and it's just horrible, and for whatever reason the magazine were to post that, that doesn't do anything. It makes the company look bad. It makes Sky and Telescope look bad. It makes Richard look bad. If any YouTube person were to do it, it would put bad content out, and it just doesn't do anybody favors. We're here to build up our hobby and our industry in a productive way, and just slime coating something doesn't do that. But there are reviews out there. I've seen reviews that borderline that. I know, Richard, we've talked about a couple of those in the last year or two that have come up, where you have a product that isn't necessarily bad, but there was a lot of idiosyncrasies that should be addressed. But it's still it's in the
Yeah.
framework.
Yeah. I've had some products. I remember one thing I almost said we can't run the review. And I ended up saying it, I ended up thinking about it some more and realizing that it's actually, for the price, it's actually pretty good. I mean, and I put that, I alluded to that in the review. I said, this is not a triple triple star league sort of product. They kind of promote it like it is, but it's not. And really, the price, if you look at the price, you can see it's a Walmart type price. But really, for a type price, it's actually pretty good. And then really, if all you have, I mean, everybody doesn't have $8,000 to spend on a telescope or a mount. And if all you have is $1,500 and it took you 3 years, 4 years to save that up, and your wife or spouse is not real happy with you spending it, and this is all you can do, it's a good value, for that amount of money, and it's okay. Um, your remark too reminded me of another type of beta tester that I forgot about. There's the pleasers. A lot of people want to beta test. They want you to like them. And when they beta test, they don't give you any useful feedback. All they do is tell you how great it is. It's so great. And this is so great. And you're such a genius. And this couldn't be better. And I just love using it, and this and that. That's wonderful. And when I ship it, I hope a lot of other people will say that too. But what I need to do is not ship it and find out when you click the red button, it explodes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I hate to complain, but this is really awkward. And there's this one thing I click on it all the time, and the mouse, it's hard to get on. And that's what I need. You're not complaining. You're giving me really useful things because and I was on this soapbox the other day with, another development project. It's like, you need external testers. When I build something, I test it really, really well, but I test it the way I expect it to be used. And as soon as it gets into somebody else's hands, I'm like, why are you trying to do that? And these are things that I would not have anticipated. I would not have guessed. And you have to put it in other people's hands in order to get that kind of in order to get that kind of feedback. So, for a beta tester, critiques and this doesn't work, you actually want that. I want that much more than I want this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. And when it comes to writing a review, it's also, it needs to not look too much like you're a sycophant, and I just, I'm making this sound as good as possible so I can get a free something or another. It's like, Kevin and I are friends, right? I mean, we're really good friends, but I gave him the riot act over the placement of those ports on the Wave 150, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
like,
That's a good example where it's like, why'd we
what
put
are
him
you
here?
guys? What are you guys thinking? This is like the worst idea. But you know what? If I don't do that, I'm not any good as a reviewer, to give feedback, or as a beta tester. And I do beta test some Skywatcher things, and it's like, I don't know what you're thinking. This is awful. But this is really good. You're onto something, but this right here, you got to fix that. You have to give that kind of feedback, and it's good to have that in a review too, so that when somebody buys something, they know what the idiosyncrasies are.
Yeah.
This thing is really great unless you're in light polluted skies. Like, well, it's okay. I live on a farm. I'm going to be happy with it. Or it's really great unless it's really humid. You're like, well, I live in Arizona, so I'm not going to worry about it. Cameras, I think cameras. First night out, screws rust. Why can't you use stainless steel? Please, for the name of, and the love of God, put stainless steel screws in these things. Everybody doesn't live in Arizona, and I put that in a review. Somebody used screws and it rusted, and I complained about that in a review. Another person used stainless steel and it didn't, and I Sean had to cut it back some because, like, why are you so excited about stainless steel screws? I'm like, cause very few people put stainless steel screws, and it's just so annoying when they don't. And sometimes, I review with honest critiques. It also helps the manufacturers know how to improve their product. Like, oh, I guess he's right. Everybody doesn't live in Arizona, and it practically looks like it rained on your gear in the morning from the dew in Florida most times. So yeah,
No, those little idiosyncrasies are good for people because, like I said earlier, nothing is going to be perfect. And the more transparent you are, like if you're getting ready to get into reviews or start your own channels, the more uh, direct, respectful, and transparent you are, the more people are going to be willing to work with you, and the more people who are going to find you credible because you're fair. It's one thing to be like, this thing's a piece of crap, you shouldn't buy it. Okay, on what grounds? You've got to give me context of why this was trash. And if you can back that up and tell me why, Okay, but you could do that in a respectful way, not just like, don't buy this, it's terrible. Okay,
It wouldn't
great.
run a, it would, I couldn't power it with my cell phone charger. It's garbage.
Yeah,
Okay.
well, most cell phone chargers don't give you enough power. So, or most batteries will shut
Yeah.
down if they're not at a certain level of output regularly. So there's like all these little things, but that's what's expected of a really knowledgeable reviewer or even beta tester is, yeah, I know that. It's not even an issue at that point. And of course you wouldn't do this or this because it doesn't, there's a fly in here. Um, of course it wouldn't do this or this because we all know that already. We don't even need to approach the fact of that happening because it's common knowledge. People want to know more in depth, things that are less known. Like when we released the Heliostar 76, everybody was like, there's no way you did 0.5 angstroms with, one etalon. And I could post pictures all day long and people wouldn't believe me. I had to get it into the hands of very credible people who do solar as well and just let them go with it. And that's it. When we send a product out for review, everyone's like, well, it was cherry picked. Why would I cherry pick it? It does me no good. It makes me look, it doesn't make the company look credible. And that's not something we want. That's not something Richard would want on his products or anybody for that. You want to be transparent, you want to be fair, and you want to be credible. So if you're going to start your own review website or you want to be a beta tester, make sure those are kind of the pillars that you stand on, and don't just go out and be like, well, I didn't like this thing, or this thing's going to be terrible because the last generation was terrible. Well, if the last generation of product wasn't good, why'd we make a new generation? Probably because we addressed it. So it's not fair to make speculations on why this new product is going to be bad when all the precedents that you're putting on it were built from the original. So be fair
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
things.
It's frustrating as a product developer too. People second guess your engineering trade-offs. It's like there's always engineering trade-offs, right? It's like if we spend this on the glass, we don't have enough to spend on this, or if we do this. And I remember I remember talking to some engineers at a telescope company where the engineers like, well, you need this kind of wire, and then somebody somewhere would change out the type of wire, or yeah, it's just frustrating when people second guess you. Never mind, I'm going to
It
go off on
happen.
a
It
tangent
happens
with
all the
that.
time. We
But
release new products and people shoot it down. It's like, why didn't you do it this way? Why didn't you do it that way?
yeah,
It's like,
I'm
well,
an engineer. That's my
yeah,
favorite. We come up at the booth. I'm an engineer in another field, and I'm going to second guess your domain. There's a thing I can't remember what it's called. This happens in reviews a lot of times too. Is I am an expert. I mean, I am a world class expert in my field, and I'm going to read a couple of things about this field over here. And because I'm so smart and so confident in this field, all of that's going to translate to this other field where I only know as little as only a little bit of experience with it. And they think that all of this wisdom and credibility translates to some venue which is brand new to them, and they bring all this baggage with them. And I remember doing the same thing myself. I was a computer graphics expert, and when I got into astrophotography, it held me back for a little while because it's like, well, this is how images work. This is how color images are represented on GPUs and this, that, and the other thing. And why doesn't it work the same way in astrophotography? And everybody in astrophotography is doing it wrong. And it took me a while to realize how stupid I was, until I learned that domain and so forth. So that happens too. Reviewer with a lot of credibility in one area, they'll get involved in something and they want that same clout and that same expertise. They don't want to have to start over from scratch. But people will come up to the booth a lot and like, I don't want to have to learn anything new. Why? Of course you do. Why do you have a hobby if you don't want to learn anything new? What you mean is you don't want to start over. You've developed a workflow that makes you very efficient, and you don't want to have to suddenly give up that workflow and be slow and frustrated for a while you learn this other workflow. It's not that you don't want to learn anything new. It's just you don't want to start over. And Yeah, a lot of there are a lot of reviews in the world. It may have even been me once or twice, long ago, where you try to take that confidence and apply it to something where you really shouldn't have much confidence at all. You don't know what you're doing. It's the
I've seen that a lot
Dunning-Kruger
in
effect. Yeah.
the nightscape community. You get a lot of very
Hmm.
experienced, amazing photographers that do weddings or portraits or whatever. They're incredibly experienced in what they do. And it's not saying that what they know wouldn't apply to this other type of photography, but there's a lot of new rules at play when you come into astrophotography, which a lot of us here know. But I have had time and time again where I'm a professional wedding photographer. I know what I'm doing on this and this and this. And you get the image, and it's like problem after problem after problem. And they're not willing to adapt to the new rules of the game. And then you have some kid come in with a can of Rebel who's never touched it before and just annihilates it and produces amazing
Because
work because they're
they
starting
don't
from
have,
scratch.
right, they don't have those
Mm-hmm.
preconceptions holding them back. They're like, all right, I'm a blank slate. Tell me how this works. I remember trying to explain how turning up the ISO wasn't making their images more noisy. It was, shorter exposures and less aperture, less light was making the image noisy. No, it's the ISO. And this is, a professional photographer with lots of experience doing, like you said, weddings and sports events and that. And there's a lot of rules of thumb that we get used to. I hate rules of thumb because the rule of thumb only works in a few situations, and it's a shortcut. But the shortcut will hold you back because you don't understand how to get more. You don't actually know how it's working under the covers. And so to get the most, you need to get past the shortcuts and yeah. Anyway, I'm off topic again. I told you I can do that very easily.
Well, we only have
So
like 3 minutes left. So is there anything that you'd want to tell anybody who, if they're like, well, I'd like to start doing reviews. I'd like to maybe start my own YouTube thing doing stuff like this. What would you tell someone who's getting started?
do it. Um, I would just say you have to be competent. And so you may need some time to get to know what you're doing. We were making a joke, and there's a private forum somewhere in the ether with vendors, and I made the analogy once. What if instead of making telescopes, we made stoves? What are the kinds of customer support things we would get? And we called it Stovey Nights. But be like, the stove is awful. My friend has your stove, and he cooks great meals, and I burn everything on my stove. I want a new stove. Or I only gave the stove 1 star because it doesn't have an ice maker built into it. And when I'm cooking, I get really hot and I would love a cold drink. It, you don't, you need to realize everything isn't about the gears, as Warren Keller says. It's not always the plane. Sometimes it's the pilot. So I would say you need to diversify. Don't find a problem solution that works only in one situation for one particular thing. You really need to try to make things hard on yourself. Great book. Talent is overrated. And it talks about the fact that really the most talented people in the world, as soon as they get good at something and they plateau, they make things harder on themselves. And this has been my philosophy since before I read the book, and I didn't even realize what a great philosophy it was. But as soon as you get really good at wide field stuff, start trying to do some long focal length, and it will kick your butt. And then started, okay, I'm doing really long focal length, and now I'm going to do lucky imaging. And God, this is hard compared to what I've been doing. And then it's like solar. Oh, it's hot. And why aren't my prominences coming out? You've got to try everything and intentionally be willing to get frustrated because nobody learns anything doing things that are easy. It's like those commercials. Sit on your couch and effortlessly exercise. Listen, if it's effortless, it's not exercise, right? So you have to really embrace, the hobby and spread yourself around and try a lot of different things. Don't just plateau on one thing and then think that um, you're an expert because you're an expert at that one thing in that one specific domain. I've had really accomplished imagers ask me what kind of camera to get, and I say, go get this camera, it's really good. And they'll get the camera and then they send me pictures. Said, Richard, this camera's awful. And it's got these big white brown, and I'm like, those are dust donuts. You didn't take any flats? Well, I never had to take flats with my other camera. Oh my gosh. You know, that's the sort of thing. Diversify. Anyway, yeah, I'm going to stop before I embarrass myself or a friend
No,
or something.
no,
But
it's all
yeah,
good.
yeah.
I
But
would,
do it. Do it. It's great. Astrophotography is wonderful. And as soon as you get comfortable, make it hard on yourself.
yeah, I
Yep.
I would also mirror a lot of that. I would also say play with as much stuff as you can get your hands on. I know a lot of people are like, well, I have to buy all this stuff and I can't. I didn't buy a bunch of stuff. I had a group of friends and I was just curious. It's like, hey, can I try this? Can I try that lens? Can I try the Teleview 17 instead of my little 17 Plaza? What's the difference? Hey, go to a star party and be like, well, what's that scope like? And what's that scope like? And just mess with as much stuff. But you got to give it time too. You can't just spend 5 minutes with it and be like, I know all about this scope. You really got to take a
Oh,
couple
yeah.
nights to mess with a product or an item to really understand it. Like, Richard knows this. I recently got into making tiki drinks. Yes, Kevin has another hobby. To stack it on. Or I got into smoking meats thanks to my stepdad. Those have been learning curves and they are completely outside of my elements, but I like having people over. I like entertaining people. But right now, I'm really interested in like rums and
Hey, everybody at Ken's house, 7 p.m.
yeah. But right now, I have no idea about this, and it's a huge world. And like astronomy, it's like, well, I like April refractors, and I like this. Everyone has their opinions on it, but at the moment, I'm trying to be like, well, what do I like? So everywhere I go, if it's a restaurant and they've got something I haven't tried before, it's like, can I just get a taster of it? I like this one. I don't like that one. That one was kind of interesting. How'd you make that drink? And you just start compiling it all. I did the same thing with fish tanks, guitars, photography. It's just, I like to mess with that. I like to learn stuff. And I think that's a big thing when you're doing reviews or beta testing is you want to build your foundation by trying all kinds of things and really trying to, get your
Yeah.
roots in
Yeah.
there so you've got a foundation or it's like I know what I'm talking about because I've tried a bunch of stuff.
A lot of astronomy clubs also have loaner programs.
Mm-hmm.
Like my local club here, Cephas, they have a loaner program. So you could check out an SCT, you could check out a Dob, you could check out a refractor, you can check out different kinds of mounts, and they'll let you borrow it and use it. That's another thing I think that gave me a leg up is I remember showing up at a star party with a Paramount, and I won the photography contest, and somebody's like, "That's not fair, you had a Paramount." I was like, "Dude, I would trade you gear, and I bet I could get a better picture than you," and which sounds really arrogant, but it was like getting a good picture is not necessarily about having the top gear. I learned a lot of things the hard way. I spent a lot of money on a lot of garbage long before I went to work for Software Bisque. And even when I worked at Software Bisque, it was a good 5 years before I started doing, imaging with their stuff. I was doing planetarium stuff, for a long time. And using inexpensive things is a great way to really actually learn so that you appreciate the good stuff when the good stuff comes along.
I was gonna
So
actually go off of
yeah,
that too, but yeah, you
yeah,
start to it's like playing guitar or if you played or listening to music or something like that. After a while, you can tell when it's like it's a little off, like it's not
yeah,
quite there. And
yeah.
if you're a musician, your ear refines. If you're imaging or doing visual, your eye refines. Richard and I have had conversations. I know we're running over time at this point, but we're not here anyway, so
That's
um
right. There's no Q&A.
but Richard and I have gone back. We've compared IP. That's a great way to start doing things is compare things. Get your friends together. Someone's got some Pentaxes. Someone's got some Televiews. You've got these eyepieces. They have that. Compare them. Try them out. Both are really, really good. But Richard and I compared two really high-end eyepieces at Texas Star Party, and neither of them were bad. But you could see slowly when comparing them how one would edge out another. but that could completely change when you switch the scope. So
Yeah, yeah,
go out and
yeah. And
try stuff.
when you get started, you couldn't tell the difference. I mean, I remember I couldn't tell the difference between a good eyepiece and a bad eyepiece. And then one day I saw the difference between two eyepieces, like, wow. And then you can't unsee it. Nothing is ever as good again as that.
Mm-mm.
And then you compare that with some good ones. Okay, they're all good. And it takes time. There is no quick way to become an expert wine taster, right? You have to sample a lot of wines and work at it, and you've got to buy a lot of wines. They say astronomy is expensive. I'm like, really? Have you been shopping for a boat lately or golf clubs? There's not a cheap hobby. But yeah, I
Yeah.
digress. Yeah, yeah.
But well, to finish it off, if you're interested in doing stuff like this, just be professional, be fair, and be transparent about things. And it will actually take you really far, and try as much stuff as you can. Because there's a lot of people out there that would love to know your opinion. Just make sure your opinion and what you're giving is actually based with some facts and a good resume, because then people will actually, they want to hear what people have to say, but people want to hear from a credible source. Don't just say something for the sake of saying something. That's what Facebook's for. But
The real telescopes of Beverly Hills.
yeah, but if you want to do this professionally, and clearly, Trevor and Ashley, and I think Nico and Dylan, they all make a living off of doing their YouTube channels and doing reviews and overviews and stuff like that.
And it's work.
It's a lot of work. I've talked to Trevor in
work.
length about, hey, I want to do my own YouTube, and people have asked me that, and then I talked to Trevor on how much effort goes into editing. I don't have time for that. But yeah, people want to hear from credible sources. So be a credible source. Don't just be another clickbait thing. I think that's ultimately a big thing inside reviews, is you want to be credible. But yeah.
Yep.
All right, guys. Well, we went like 8 minutes over time. If you like what you see here, yeah, bonus. If you like what you see here, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Do you still run your website, Richard?
Who, me?
Yeah.
Yeah, eveningshow.com. That's my gallery.
Yeah, you can go over to Richard's website, eveningshow.com. He's got some cool stuff up there. If you happen to be at Grand Canyon Star Party tonight, which would be Friday the 27th is when this airs, I think, or Saturday the 28th, Richard and I will be up there, with a bunch of other people. Come by, say hi. Other than that, we'll see you sometime soon. Next week, we are back live once again for What's Up in the Night Sky. So stop by and hang out with us. Other than that, Richard, thanks for hanging out. And
That's July 4th, isn't it?
yeah, we might be closed on that one. It might be another pre-recorded episode. I have to figure that out. So
I don't think you.
it's been a weird few weeks with stuff going on. So we'll see, but we'll be here, whether it's live or recorded. We'll be here. There'll be an episode there. But Richard, thanks for giving your insight on reviews and beta testing.
Sure.
And yeah, hope you guys have a good weekend. It should be fairly dark, so get out there. So we'll see you guys soon. Clear skies. Also, one big announcement. We've hit 1 million views on this channel. So thank you guys very, very much for supporting us and watching us, and we'll keep this going. So other than that, clear skies, everyone. Thanks again, and we will see you guys very soon. Bye.